Hello, today I want to talk about the oil and gas producing companies. In fact, I want to talk about any company in the energy sector that is not pursuing clean, renewable energy. The question is, why aren't these dirty, traditional energy producers not leading the charge to reduce greenhouse gas emissions? Now, I'm saying this not from the standpoint of an ESG climate activist. I'm saying this from the standpoint of a shareholder. I personally believe that the path to long-term profitability is to be the one leading the charge to reduce these greenhouse gas emissions. I think that's better for the company and the shareholders in the long run. I did a similar set of videos regarding the automobile manufacturing industry. You may recall that there was a lawsuit. The companies on the right here said, hey, we do not want California to have their own emission standards. We want there to be one standard in the US, the one that is less stringent than the more stringent California one. Ford, BMW, Honda, VW said, we don't care. Finally, November 2020, GM says, look, we don't care either. And then in February 2021, they all said, look, we're fine with the more stringent standards in California. Now you can listen to the two videos, watch the two videos where I talk about this and why it's good for them to be on this side of the debate. You can watch those videos by following these links right here. Of course, in the news, we see Chevron. They had a shareholder vote. In one vote, they said, hey, let's look at scope 3 emissions for customers. 61% of the shareholders say, yes, you need to implement this plan that will reduce the scope 3 emissions for your customers. Interestingly, things that did not pass were a report that would kind of walk the shareholders through what would happen as fossil fuel demand decreases. Also, what did not pass would be a report that would outline the lobbying efforts of Chevron. I think that's interesting. I personally would like to see those two things. The first one would go right to the whole point of this video, and the second one I think is interesting from the standpoint of how much money is Chevron spending to influence, emission standards regulations. Now, also we see over in the Netherlands that the court ordered Royal Dutch Shells to do a better job. Royal Dutch said, hey, we're going to reduce our greenhouse emissions by 20% from 2019 to 2030. The court said, no, you don't. That's not good enough. We are going to mandate a 45% improvement in that regard. Now you can see some other videos where I talk about similar types of things by following these links right here. We also have engine number one. So a hedge fund says, look, we have some shares of Exxon Mobil. We want 3 people on the board. So they spent a ton of money to get 3 people on the board. They successfully got all 3 of these people on the board. And their whole premise is you need to embrace the transition to renewable energy. If you don't, my argument here, my argument with the automobile companies, if you don't, that is going to lead to a decline in share price. Namely, as I would argue, is because it's going to be a decline in profits. Now, the whole point here is that you can't really stop this trend, right? So people and governments, et cetera, are demanding that we reduce emissions of all types. But here we're talking about greenhouse gases. And so you might as well, as a company, just get ahead of the game, right? Make incremental changes, be ahead of schedule. If you do this at your own pace, you'll be able to do it in a more efficient, cheaper, more profitable way than if you fight it and have to make these changes last minute. It's just a matter of doing it the right, more efficient, economically prudent way than just being kind of blindsided by these changes and regulations. That is my key point there. Now, the big 5 in terms of the oil giants, they say, hey, we're doing all kinds of stuff here, man. We're making all these changes anyway. You don't need to keep piling regulations on us. You don't need to have these board members. You don't need to vote against us in terms of the shareholders. You don't need to have court orders, etc. We're already doing all these things. But it turns out it's a little bit of nonsense there because they're way behind. I mean, they're just not even meeting their targets. They're way behind what the Paris Accords would say. They're not really getting there. So back to my whole argument here is long-term businesses are better. And they really need to think much more long-term. The long-term cannot change. It won't change. We are going down this path of reducing emissions. It's going to happen. So as a long-term business, you need to plan for that and do it in the most efficient, cost-effective way. And you might as well be ahead of schedule because it's never going to go backwards in any real long-term meaningful way. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm Brian Kozlowski. Thank you so much. Have a great day.